We aim every night to be factual and fair. That's our goal.
When weather turns extreme.
The 150-mile-per-hour hurricane is still churning north.
Rapidly intensifying.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real, you'll have time to get prepared. Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS News.
I don't love seeing Republicans attacking each other. It's fine to contrast issues, but I want to keep focused on what our pledge was, which was beat Biden.
He's scared. He is just a couple of steps away from that jail cell closing behind him.
These indictments are a disaster for the country.
Hi, everyone from Washington. I'm Scott McFarland, and welcome to America Decides. History tomorrow, the first Republican presidential debate of this historic 2024 cycle. 8 podiums will be on the stage in the arena in Milwaukee, which will, by the way, will be the city that hosts the 2024 Republican National Convention. Those are the 8 candidates who will be there. The front runner, the former President Donald Trump, will not. Let's get on the ground in Milwaukee right away. Robert Costa and Finn Gomez, both there 24 hours before this debate. I want you both to answer this question. Bob, let me start with you. How does it feel different, if it does, 24 hours before the debate without Donald Trump attending tomorrow?
Scott, good to be with you and here with Finn in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's clear there's a lot of anticipation here about what's going to happen on Wednesday evening. So many of the rival campaigns have high expectations that they can try to have a breakthrough moment. Many of them need a breakthrough moment to generate interest, sustained interest from donors, from supporters in early states. And so while it might not be the most high-stakes debate in terms of the overall race, because Trump is in such a front-running position, for many of them, this is a night of survival. Can they actually endure in the Republican presidential race? And if you're someone like Governor Doug Burgum, who is at 1%, or your former Vice President Mike Pence, who's in the single digits, you really could use a breakthrough moment, even if it's just underscoring your biography to much of the Republican electorate.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of these folks, this is the first opportunity they have to make a name for themselves, to really declare to the audience of potential Republican viewers that this is my platform, this is what I stand for. I think in a cycle that's been dominated by Trump, the former president, and his legal hurdles and troubles, I think this is a moment where they can have those breakthrough moments where they're hoping, and some of them may have just a few minutes compared to like some of the others. You know, they just have a couple windows before the cycle is probably overtaken again just the next day by Trump and his legal hurdles in Atlanta.
And it's also, Scott, I would say, too, Finn, a reckoning for the Republican National Committee. We saw David Bossie, who's one of the organizers of this debate for the RNC, walking around. Who runs the party? Who really is the chairman of the party, the chairperson of the party? Ronna McDaniel, in name, is, and she runs the Republican National Committee. But when you have the front runner in the party decide not to show up at the party's debate and not to sign the pledge to protect the eventual nominee, it raises questions about political capital inside the GOP. And while Trump is close to McDaniel, he's close to Bossie, his former deputy campaign manager, he's saying to them, I don't need you. Right. I don't need to be there. And it will be a real question in the newsrooms around the country and for the Republican voter. What's the big event of the week? Is it the Republican debate, or is it Trump expected to surrender later this week in Fulton County, Georgia? And Trump's bet, based on my reporting, my conversations with his associates and allies and advisors, is that he believes his voters care more about him being defiant on Thursday than being on the stage on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting note. David Bossie, his former deputy campaign manager, essentially in 2016, and also, he handpicked Ronna McDaniel. She's at that helm, and both, we know that we have confirmed that Ronna McDaniel went up to Bedminster to personally plead with the former president to attend this debate, and that he's not debating. And frankly, have we ever seen this, Bob? I mean, where you have the front runner with such a wide margin not showing up to this debate when typically it would be all eyes on him at this debate.
But it's so early. I mean, that's the thing. You think about 1992 presidential race. Bill Clinton didn't get into that race until the fall of '91. Right. So we're at such an early moment. I remember you and I were covering the 2012 presidential race. Yeah. Who had the big debate in 2012 in the summer? Michelle Bachmann, the congresswoman from Minnesota. She had a big debate. She won the Ames straw poll. Yeah. It was the summer of Bachmann. She didn't end up winning Iowa. She didn't end up winning the Republican nomination. So we have to be careful. This is an important moment at this stage in the race, but it might not be that big of a moment long term. We're not trying to tell you not to care. It's important as a political marker. But in the long-term story of this presidential race, it's the first inning.
Yeah, and there's still just and less than 150 days away until the Iowa caucuses, which is actually a lifetime, as you know, Scott, in politics. So a lot could still happen. But tomorrow night, I think, really is a new chapter in this cycle, and we're really going to hear from a lot of this field. And a lot of this field will get a chance to really present themselves to the country and potential Republican voters.
Without Trump, it's Ron DeSantis, to a degree, literally and metaphorically, who's center stage. Before I ask you a question about the Florida governor, let's take a listen to what he said earlier today.
2024 is our moment of choosing. We are not going to get a mulligan on this one. The Democrats are playing for keeps. The time for excuses for Republicans is over. We must get the job done.
Based on your conversations and reporting, Bob, you first, is it expected that the political fire will be trained on Ron DeSantis by the others, or are his numbers so soft now that he needn't be targeted?
A lot of this is going to depend on the question in the moment. I spoke to former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in recent weeks, spent a day with him at the Jersey Shore, not the worst place to spend a day, at Seaside Heights. And Christie said his ire, his target is Trump, even if Trump's not on the stage. But he'll be willing to take on DeSantis if it comes to that. But the Florida governor is at a point in the race where he may need to actually stretch his own political muscles and really make a case for his own record in Florida, maybe take on someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's garnering a lot of support among Trump voters. A debate super PAC memo was circulated in DeSantis' orbit.
Leaked, yeah.
Well, yeah, and it shows that some DeSantis allies believe he should be taking on Ramaswamy more than anyone, because DeSantis has been attacking Trump from the right, but that has created some vulnerability with the Trump electorate to some extent.
And Ramaswamy has moved up, if you look at some of those national polls, I mean, in the last few weeks, and really taking away as DeSantis has slid, you've seen Ramaswamy move up. So that would be a very interesting dynamic to see, that Vivek Ramaswamy versus Ron DeSantis tomorrow night. But I do think, and speaking to some of the rival campaigns to DeSantis, that Ron DeSantis should have basically a bullseye on his chest, because he will be. You should expect a lot of rhetorical missiles to be fired at the Florida governor, and I do expect that he will be a prime target for the rest. They got to clear him out. They got to clear out the #2 spot to be the chief alternative to Donald Trump. Even if it's a wide margin, the person that's in their way right now is Ron DeSantis. So expect that. I would expect that. Some of the others, like we mentioned, Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie may throw some fireballs at Ron DeSantis as well. I mean, it could come from all sides, from the right, from the left, from the center. So I think he will be a prime target tomorrow night, Scott.
The depths of summer, and it's 78 degrees outside the arena in Milwaukee. Enjoy that, both of you. Bob Costa, Finn Gomez. We appreciate it.
It's a beautiful night tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Coming up, history of another type on Thursday. Donald Trump expected to be fingerprinted, booked, and processed at the jail in Atlanta. Some of his co-defendants made some provocative moves late today. Nicole Killian's on the ground. She joins us next.
It's important to our nation.
I wonder how you think about where America is at this moment.
It's on Face the Nation.
Can there be stability if Vladimir Putin remains in power?
Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan on CBS.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And it becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, oh, we're going to tell you about that, too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Let's bring in our partners at the Weather Channel.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
Feel the forecast, streaming on CBS News.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Now one more child!
School shootings have parents fighting mad.
I promised my daughter I was going to fight. It's going to keep on happening.
And teachers taking lessons in how to fight back.
This is an exercise.
We approach it as it's you or them.
It shouldn't have to be your teacher's job to protect your life.
But will the battle over gun control,
People are afraid that they're going to lose their gun rights altogether.
be the hardest lesson of all?
The exercise, you're having to shoot at an adult. Are you prepared to have to kill one of your students?
Guns in the Classroom, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She's the most successful alpine skier, male or female, ever, and a worldwide inspiration.
We need a lot of women doing sports really, really well.
The story of Michaela Schifrin's game-changing reign at the top of the slopes when we go person to person.
Welcome back to America Decides. The former president and 18 co-defendants have until 12 p.m. Eastern Time Friday to turn themselves in to authorities on charges related to the alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. Two of those co-defendants did so today, conservative attorney John Eastman and bail bondsman Scott Graham Hall. They've already surrendered to Fulton County authorities. Let's go to Fulton County. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is there. Nicole, first of all, describe what it was like when John Eastman, this figure who became so prominent in the January 6th investigation, showed up to turn himself in to authorities.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. I mean, look, we actually were expecting Eastman to surrender tomorrow, Wednesday, so he actually did it a day earlier than expected, and it was first thing this morning, and not long after that other defendant, Scott Hall. The other surprising thing is that in addition to his attorney sending out a statement, he actually stopped and spoke to reporters as he exited the jail. Here's what he had to say.
I am confident that when the law is faithfully applied in this proceeding, all of my co-defendants and I will be fully vindicated. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, very much.
Eastman posted bond of $100,000. Those were the terms set in the agreement that was reached between his attorneys and that of the district attorney. But as you mentioned, Scott, certainly one of many prominent figures in this case. He was one of the alleged architects of the former president's alleged strategy to try to overturn the 2020 election. At this point in time, obviously, we're still waiting for other defendants to surrender. But of course, the biggest name that everyone is tracking is that of the former president, who is expected to surrender here on Thursday.
Let's take a moment and show the images of these 19 defendants in this unique prosecution in American history. Today's events underscore that some of them are new names to Americans. John Eastman, Scott Hall, but as you said, Nicole, the most prominent, expected to show up Thursday, the former president of the United States. What do we know about the timetable or the processes to expect on Thursday there in Fulton County?
Well, the Fulton County Sheriff's Office has made clear that there will be a hard lockdown in this area. Of course, the jail is kind of sandwiched between this industrial zone and a residential neighborhood. So they have warned, for instance, that streets may be shut down around this area. And we also know from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office that he will process, and his department will process the former president and all of these defendants in the same way, which could potentially include fingerprinting, which could potentially include the former president having to get his mugshot taken. Also, this is different because it's happening at a jail, not at a courthouse, where we have seen the president have to do some of these maneuvers and procedures before. But that being said, I think it's worth noting that most of these defendants are complying in the sense of trying to reach a bond agreement with the district attorney, planning to surrender before the end of the week. But there's one defendant, a former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who late today asked for an extension to surrender. And the district attorney basically slapped that down, saying that she is not going to grant any extensions and that she has given all of these defendants 2 weeks to surrender, that she's been very gracious about that, and that if he doesn't show up, she will file a warrant for his arrest after noon on Friday.
And just a few moments ago, at the federal courthouse in Atlanta, judges ordered Bonnie Willis to respond to Mark Meadows' request and to do so by tomorrow afternoon. The hearing Mark Meadows expects in this request to move it to federal court is Monday, 10 a.m., same time as a big hearing in D.C. in Trump's case here in Washington. I mention that because it's unclear to me when everybody else, those other famous names, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, will surrender. From the vantage points you've been given, Nicole, can you see people going in or out of the jail, or have they moved everybody far enough away where it's invisible to you?
Yeah, we're pretty much at a distance. I mean, as you can see behind me, probably you can just see the sign, and that's about all. And that's pretty much all that we can see here ourselves. The jail is set pretty far back away from the street, but we are outside of one of the entrances that is typically used for the intake process. There's another main entrance for the jail. And so really, it's just about kind of keeping eyes out for convoys that may be coming, back and forth throughout the jail and these checkpoints. Other than that, the sheriff's office has been transparent in the sense of when individuals are booked. They are posting that information, although we have yet to see a mugshot from the two individuals who surrendered today, John Eastman and Scott Hall. And then just to add on Meadows, again, part of the reason he's asking for this extension is, as you know, he wants to move this case out of Fulton County into federal court. And so he actually wants the court to rule on this motion before his surrender deadline. And so that's why he's asking for this extension, because he hopes that this case, to potentially throw out this case and move it to federal court, will be heard first before he has to surrender. But again, the district attorney is saying, I'm not playing that. You have to negotiate with me on the terms of bond either Wednesday or Thursday. Otherwise, again, she will file an arrest warrant. So as far as the other defendants, right now we're under the impression that most of them will comply. Jenna Ellis, for instance, one of those who has a bond arrangement today, along with about 5 other individuals. So this process is moving relatively swiftly, Scott.
Just a fire hose of activity there at that courthouse and that jail. Nicole Killian from Atlanta, thank you very much.
You bet.
While Donald Trump won't be in attendance tomorrow night at the debate in Milwaukee, next, longtime Democratic political strategist James Carville joins us to explain how the other candidates on stage should strategize.
An original documentary from CBS reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony Dvoldar from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education. If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
On our places, bright shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
A few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Welcome back to America Decides. 2 of the more memorable debate moments from former Presidents Obama and Reagan. Tomorrow night, 8 GOP candidates meet in Milwaukee for the first Republican primary debate of this season. James Carville joins us now, longtime Democratic political consultant who notably was chief strategist on President Clinton's 1992 campaign. James, we appreciate the time. You know how to prep somebody for a multi-person debate where the bandwidth and the airtime is narrow. How does somebody stand out when there's 7 people next to them?
I got a cheat sheet right here. So first, you assume that 40 minutes is going to be taken up by introductions, administrative stuff, questions, et cetera, et cetera. This might be a little they're not going to have opening question statement, so you might have a little bit more time. You got 8 candidates, so if you divide 8 into 72, which is 60% of 120, you get 9 minutes. Let's figure this time you might get 11. All right, that's it. Just be careful. It's not 120 minutes, and I've broken it down to A, B, C. All right, A, answer the question. B, attack Biden. C, state your position clearly. So if you're asked about abortion, say, my position is simply this: I want a federal ban of all abortions after 15 months. Under the Biden administration, you could hardly blame people for not having children with staggering runaway historical inflation, with Hunter Biden on an international crime spree and porous open borders, or whatever it is, whatever stupid thing they're going to say. And then state your position very clearly. And, I'm for, sealing off the border. I'm for dealing with whatever it is, all right, whatever cockamamie stuff that they come up with. And my final piece of advice, and this is big, it's the cutaways. All right, the camera never. There's always going to be a camera on you. So whenever someone else is talking, if you're grimacing or you're doing something or you're fidgeting around, that's going to pick you up, and that's going to be that. Don't forget the cutaways. I mean, my other advice: don't over-prepare. Don't over-prepare. You got 11 minutes. Be sure you use them right. This is after doing 100 debate preps nationally and internationally in my life.
Well, how do you prep somebody for
simple it is?
I'm sorry. How do you prep somebody to interject in an 8-person debate? Because you got to try to find your own airtime where it may not otherwise exist. But you also don't want to look like you're being overly aggressive or, I'm sorry, in a party primary, rude to other Republicans.
So you get it. Somebody interrupts you. You're speaking. You say, "Excuse me for speaking while you interrupted me." And then just say, this is something that, the liberal woke Democrats do. They feel like they can be rude and interrupt anybody. Just, hide behind, you can't think of anything else, just hide behind progressive or just say woke or some inane word that they use. But the point is, people are going to notice that you're being interrupted. And, frankly, if I had as little to say as my opponent had in his previous answer, I would try to interrupt me and say something too. I mean, you just practice your one-liners, and you have to practice timing. Timing is everything. And it's particularly everything when you got 11 minutes. But wait for somebody to interrupt you. And then when they interrupt you, just cold cock them. Boom. And you can do that. And they're going to be doing different things, but you get to play too, not just them.
For some number of Americans, this whole exercise is rendered moot by Trump not being there. Does this open the opportunity or open the door for President Biden to say, I'm not debating you if you're the Republican nominee next fall?
I guess it does. The whole debate thing and the debate commission, which I can't stand, but it's probably going to be rethought. And Trump says he's not going to debate. And, he's the 1,000-pound gorilla in the whole affair. But, you have all these stupid commentators saying he owes it to the American people to debate, as if Trump has ever thought about any obligation to the American people. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. He doesn't care. But, yeah, and of course, Biden may not want to debate. And the whole politics of debate has changed pretty drastically over the years. And I don't even know how necessary it is. And the truth of the matter is that general election presidential debates are joint press conferences. They're not really debates. So but we'll see where it goes. But Trump will lord over tonight like everything else. And, and they're going to be looking. The best way to have a breakout moment is where people say, that person makes some sense, or because you're auditioning, but the main thing you're auditioning for is these Republicans going to be looking at you, saying, can this guy, assuming, that Trump faces the inevitable and becomes a nominee, can he carry the banner of the party? And that's what I think a lot of those voters are going to be looking for tomorrow night. And you can do it pretty simply. Don't overthink. Don't overthink it.
The Biden campaign is going to run some ads. They're going to have some surrogates on the ground in Milwaukee to respond to what Republicans say tomorrow. But the bigger question to me is, James, is the president sitting out too much right now? Should he be campaigning more aggressively? Is he running a rose garden strategy where you do a few presidential events and keep quiet otherwise? Should he be doing that? Or do you think he is doing that?
Well, first of all, he didn't have to do much in 2020 because he was protected by COVID. I thought, it seems like they're getting a little more aggressive. They're trying to promote Bidenomics. They're trying to put him out a little bit more. I think they're being a little more aggressive putting people out. So far, his numbers have not moved. And they do have a heck of a case to make, and he makes an economic case. But if these numbers don't start moving here pretty soon, people are going to get very, very nervous. And we got these huge statewide legislative races coming up in Virginia in November, and if his numbers are still there, there'd be a great deal of nervousness.
What do you do if the numbers don't move, if you're a Democratic strategist?
I guess you try to keep moving them. And they point out that his numbers were, that Reagan had terrible numbers in August of 1983. Clinton didn't have great numbers in August of 1993. Or I guess it was 95, and that Obama didn't have great numbers in August of 2011. But pretty soon, these numbers need to start moving to give people some sense of comfort. But right now, I don't see any evidence they are.
Is the age issue more prominent than people think it is? Is the age issue bigger as a threat than people think it is?
It's a big issue. I mean, people talk about it. And you can't do anything about it. And I certainly can't come on Scott McFarlane and say that, they're talking about phony issues and need to pivot to a real issue. I think Americans think it's a real issue, but I think they're dealing with it as best they can. He got that historic agreement between Japan and South Korea. And, the White House, what you can say is look at what he's doing and, look at his record and forget about his age. But it's an issue that they're just not going away. And you do any focus group, it's one of the first things that pops up. And the only answer that I can think of is just plow through it.
We'll see how much, if at all, this Republican primary debate resonates without the frontrunner tomorrow. But for the guidance you've offered, James Carville, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
That does it for today. We thank you for watching. You're streaming CBS News.
It's a history-making meeting. 4 extraordinary women who are all 4-star generals and admirals.
How did you deal with being discriminated